Your partner is looking right at you, asking what's wrong. You know you should speak, you want to connect, but your mind goes blank and your body turns to stone. You shut down.
Yeah, it is one of the most painfully recognizable human moments.
Right.
Like you are physically present in the room, sitting right there on the couch, but emotionally, you are miles away.
Exactly. And it feels like a choice you can't stop making. You see the person in front of you, you see their frustration. And from a relational perspective, what you are doing is executing a profound psychological defense.
Yeah, it's a retreat.
Right, a retreat into your own inner world to protect your heart from a perceived failure in love. You pull away because the alternative, staying open when you feel misunderstood, it just feels like emotional annihilation.
But if we look at this through a biological and research-based perspective, I mean, we have to challenge the premise that this is a psychological choice at all.
Wait, really?
Not a choice. Yeah, it might be a purely biological reflex. Like, your nervous system is hijacking your body. It is pulling the emergency brake and shutting you down before your conscious mind even registers a threat.
If you like sitting with questions that don't resolve easily, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Because the experience of emotional shutdown is, it's incredibly isolating.
It really is.
You are sitting there, and a part of you desperately wants to be close to the person in front of you, yet you experience this sudden involuntary walling off.
And the deep internal conflict that creates is staggering.
Yeah.
Because your fundamental human desire for intimacy is suddenly completely at odds with your organism's mechanism for self-protection.
Like you want to reach out, but your arms literally feel like lead.
Exactly. And we have to name this tension right out of the gate in this deep dive.
Right.
Because when you experience this, you are caught in a crossfire. You don't know whether to view your emotional distance as a subconscious psychological strategy to protect your fragile ego, or as a purely somatic, biological survival response designed to keep you alive.
And this ambiguity is exactly why this pattern carries so much shame.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, when you shut down in an argument, you almost always blame yourself. You sit there thinking, I'm ruining the moment, or why am I so broken?
Why can't I just say how I feel?
Right. You take the guilt onto yourself without realizing there's a massive tug of war happening beneath the surface between your relational mind and your primal biology.
Yeah.
And I want to explore both of these honest readings. I was digging into the work of Ronald Fairbairn, a Scottish psychoanalyst from the 1940s, and what fascinated me is how he completely flipped the script on human motivation.
Oh, yeah, Fairbairn.
Because at the time, Sigmund Freud's view was the unquestioned standard, right? The idea that humans are fundamentally pleasure-seeking.
Right, driven by biological urges and the reduction of tension. Freud basically saw us as essentially selfish creatures just looking to scratch an itch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Fairbairn argued something radically different. He proposed that we are fundamentally object-seeking.
And just to clarify for everyone, in psychoanalytic terms, an object just means a person or a relationship.
Right, right. So he argued, our deepest drive isn't for physical gratification. It is for connection with another human being.
Which is a beautiful idea.
It is, but it makes us incredibly vulnerable. Because if our primary drive isn't just to eat or sleep, but to attach, then any failure in that attachment threatens our core reason for existing.
Wow, yeah.
This is where researchers talk about unseen mother wounds during childhood. These wounds aren't necessarily overt physical abuse. They are subtle, chronic relational failures.
Like emotional neglect, where a parent is physically in the room making dinner, but emotionally completely vacant.
Yes, or it could be conditional love, where affection is strictly tied to your achievements.
Right, like you only get a hug when you bring home an A on your report card.
Exactly. Or even being used as an emotional surrogate. Think of a young boy whose father is absent, so he becomes his mother's emotional stand-in. He gets rewarded for being calm, supportive, and mature. But he's never just allowed to be a needy kid. He has to grow up too fast to serve the parents' needs.
And a child in any of those situations can't just pack their bags and move out.
No, of course not.
They are entirely dependent on that caregiver for survival. They have to adapt.
And that adaptation comes at a massive cost to their developing personality. Fairbairn called this adaptation the schizoid split.
The mechanics of this are just heartbreaking.
They really are. To deal with the rejection or the neglect, the child uses what Fairbairn termed the moral defense. They repress the bad experiences and actually internalize the badness themselves.
Wow.
They unconsciously decide, my parent isn't flawed, I am flawed.
Because believing you have an incompetent or unloving caregiver is just too terrifying for a dependent child to process.
Right.
If the parent is bad, the world is fundamentally unsafe. But if I am bad, the parent is still good, and I just need to figure out how to be better to earn their love.
Exactly. So they split their ego. They take their true, needy, vulnerable self and hide it away to protect it from further rejection. And the analogy that came to mind reading this is building a massive fortress. You experience this relational pain, so you build a stone castle around your heart.
You draw up the drawbridge to keep the invaders out.
Right, and you are perfectly safe. But the tragic irony of the moral defense is that by keeping everyone out, you end up starving inside the castle.
You survive the winter, but you are utterly isolated.
Exactly. That is the psychological reading of why we shut down. We are hiding in the fortress so our inner self doesn't get destroyed by the person we love.
The fortress metaphor is really powerful, but, it implies you are making a choice, even a subconscious one, to pull up that drawbridge.
Yeah, I guess it does.
But what if you aren't? What if it is entirely involuntary? That brings us to the biological lens.
Specifically polyvagal theory, right?
Exactly. Developed by Dr. Stephen Porges in the 1990s. The core of this framework is a concept called neuroception.
Neuroception, okay.
Yeah, your nervous system is constantly scanning your environment for safety or danger, but it happens entirely below your conscious awareness.
So it's not something you're actively thinking about. It's kind of like a background app running on your phone, constantly checking for emotional Wi-Fi, draining your battery without you knowing.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And polyvagal theory argues this system operates in a hierarchy of 3 modes.
Okay, what are they?
The first is the ventral vagal mode. This is your safety and social engagement system. When neuroception tells you you're safe, this system allows you to be vulnerable, playful, and emotionally present.
But if that app detects a threat, say, your partner raises their voice slightly, or just gives you a certain critical look, you instantly drop out of ventral vagal and into the second mode.
Right, the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight.
You mobilize energy, you get defensive, angry, or reactive. We all recognize that surge of adrenaline in an argument.
Absolutely. But the third mode is where the shutdown happens. When the emotional overwhelm becomes too intense and fighting or fleeing won't work, your system pulls the emergency brake.
The dorsal vagal mode.
Yes, the freeze or collapse response. It slows your heart rate, numbs your body, and disconnects you from your surroundings. Wow. It is a primal evolutionary reflex to protect you from the pain of an unavoidable threat. In this reading, emotional withdrawal isn't a psychological fortress you built. It's a physiological protective response you have absolutely no control over.
I want to pause and push back on this a little because I was digging into the scientific reception of polyvagal theory, and the debate is intense.
Oh, definitely.
We talk about polyvagal theory in popular culture like it is settled biology, but it has serious critics in the scientific community.
Yeah.
Like in a comprehensive 2023 review, researcher Paul Grossman argued that the basic physiological assumptions of Porges's theory have essentially been falsified.
Yeah, it is a vital distinction to make. The literal neuroanatomy is highly contested by neuroscientists and evolutionary biologists.
It goes deep into the anatomy. Neuroanatomists like Neuhuber point out that Porges's claims about how the brainstem communicates with the nucleus ambiguous. They just don't match the actual anatomical evidence. And the evolutionary piece is fascinating to me. Porges claims that myelinated vagus nerve fibers evolved specifically in mammals to allow for this complex social engagement. But evolutionary biologists have pointed out that these exact same myelinated fibers are present in lungfish and other non-mammalian vertebrates.
And lungfish aren't exactly known for their complex social bonding or nuanced emotional regulation.
Right. If the biological hardware was already there in lungfish millions of years ago, it didn't evolve in mammals for social engagement.
It kind of undermines the premise.
Exactly. The whole evolutionary timeline Porges built starts to fall apart. Furthermore, critics argue the theory lacks falsifiability. You can't easily prove it wrong in a controlled lab setting, which is a core requirement of the scientific method.
Yeah.
So I found myself wondering, if the biological hardware doesn't actually work the way the theory claims it does, why are we still talking about it?
Well, that is the paradox we have to sit with. The biology might be flawed, but for trauma therapists and their patients, the model remains incredibly effective. Even if the evolutionary claims about the vagus nerve are biologically inaccurate, The framework gives people a physical vocabulary for their trauma. It completely removes the shame.
Ah,
When a patient understands, my body is trying to save me, it's not a moral failure, they stop hating themselves for shutting down.
that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like the scientific inaccuracy doesn't negate the psychological utility.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether the specific nerve pathway is right or wrong, the experience of the body hijacking the mind is very real. And that somatic hijack profoundly shapes how we operate as adults. I found the neuropsychology research on this really illuminating, specifically regarding early emotional neglect and adult sexuality.
Yeah, how do those early childhood wounds play out when a person with that kind of neurobiology tries to navigate adult intimacy?
Well, we mentioned earlier how a dependent child has to adapt. Chronically neglected children actually experience impaired development in the amygdala, making it highly reactive. Because the prefrontal cortex, the logical planning center of the brain, doesn't fully develop until our mid-20s. The amygdala just takes over as the brain's primary center for emotional reasoning and reward.
So the emotional alarm bell becomes the loudest voice in the room.
Yes, and here's how that manifests in adulthood. Instead of avoiding intimacy altogether, a person with this highly reactive amygdala might use physical intimacy, like casual sex, as a form of compensatory attachment.
Oh, wow.
They are terrified of stable, long-term emotional vulnerability because their relational self remembers those unseen mother wounds. The idea of trusting someone emotionally feels like a trap.
But their biological reward drive is desperate for connection.
Right, so they bypass the emotional terror by seeking physical satiation. They engage in casual situationships, unconsciously equating sexual intimacy with affection, validation, and acceptance.
Because it feels safer.
Exactly. Their biological reward circuitry lights up, they get that massive dopamine hit, and for a brief moment, they feel safe. But the deeper object-seeking self that Fairbairn talked about,
It is still starving inside the fortress.
yes, they are substituting dopamine for love because love feels too dangerous.
The disconnect between what the body is doing to survive and what the mind is terrified of is just stark.
It really is.
And it becomes even more profound when we look at trauma that occurs before a child can even speak. If you don't have language when the trauma happens, you can't build a narrative around it later.
Right, pre-verbal trauma. How does a brain even store a memory of something if it doesn't have the words to describe it?
It stores it in the body. The nervous system remembers what the conscious mind can't articulate.
Now,
There is a profound case study from the development of SMART therapy, which stands for sensory motor arousal regulation treatment, that illustrates this perfectly.
tell me about it.
It involves a 7-year-old boy named Elliot. Elliot had a history of severe, complex trauma from birth to age 3.
And crucially, the case study noted he suffered physical trauma to his face as a toddler. So by the time he was adopted and brought into therapy at age 7, his behavior was extreme.
Yeah, he was aggressively dysregulated, raging for hours, biting, scratching. He was incredibly triggered by direct eye contact, or if anyone even came close to touching his face or head. His body remembered the physical trauma, even if his mind couldn't explain it. Initially, therapists tried traditional talk therapy and symbolic play therapy. Like, they tried having him play with stuffed animals to express his feelings.
Which feels logical. You want the child to tell a story about their pain so they can process it.
Right.
But it failed entirely, didn't it?
Yeah.
The play just looped endlessly into themes of aggression. There was no resolution because he didn't have a story to tell.
Exactly.
His trauma wasn't a narrative. It was a physical, somatic memory trapped in his nervous system.
And when you can't talk it out, you have to move it out. So they moved Elliot to a smart room designed specifically for embodied play.
Yeah.
The room has crash pads, mini trampolines, weighted blankets. The therapist stopped trying to speak to his mind and started speaking to his nervous system.
I love this part of the study. The therapist noticed Elliot actively seeking intense sensory input, like throwing himself into the heavy cushions, which, by the way, adults do all the time. If you've ever used a heavy-weighted blanket to fall asleep or gone for an intensely aggressive run after a stressful day, you are seeking that exact same nervous system regulation. You are forcing your body to feel grounded.
We all do it. And the therapist followed Elliot's lead and piled heavy cushions on top of him to provide deep tactile pressure.
And it worked.
It did. This physical weight calmed his arousal. He was finally achieving sensory satiation. His nervous system felt physically safe. And once his body felt regulated, he spontaneously initiated a game.
What kind of game?
He asked the therapist to hold a large ball, and he hit his face into it. Then he asks the therapist to throw the ball at his face.
He is literally inviting the exact trigger of his toddlerhood trauma.
But this time, he was in control. On the third toss, Elliot used his hands to block the ball. He started punching it away, kicking it, dodging it, laughing. He was physically exploring the defensive and self-protective responses that he couldn't access when he was a helpless toddler.
He had to physically move the trauma out of his nervous system, to rewrite that somatic script before he could even begin to connect relationally with his adoptive parents.
More people carry both sides of this than you'd think. Like the deep psychological need to protect the mind and the physiological need to regulate the body.
That Elliot story perfectly illustrates the tension we've been circling. Whether you view his initial aggression as a Fairbairnian moral defense, acting out the badness to protect his inner world, or as a dorsal vagal freeze and sympathetic fight response, the practical result is the exact same.
Yeah.
You cannot force vulnerability.
You really can't. You cannot just demand that someone open up and talk about their feelings when their body believes it is under attack. The cognitive load of translating feelings into words is impossible when you are in survival mode.
Which is a mistake we make in adult relationships constantly.
Oh, all the time.
The research from Thrive Connect on emotional safety highlights this beautifully. When we push a partner for connection before safety is established, we create what researchers call forced intimacy.
Right.
If you corner your partner during an argument over the dishes and demand, "Tell me what you're feeling right now," you aren't inviting connection. You are triggering a threat response.
It drives them deeper into the fortress because safety must precede vulnerability. Always.
Yes.
If we connect this to attachment theory, the goal is to build earned secure attachment. We aren't doomed by our childhood wounds. We can earn security in adulthood, but it requires establishing physical safety and psychological safety simultaneously.
I want to break down what physical safety actually looks like in practice, because it's entirely about microsignals.
Okay, yeah.
It's not just don't yell. It's maintaining a relaxed, open posture rather than crossing your arms. It's soft eye contact instead of a piercing glare. It's breathing slowly. You are trying to literally hack the other person's neuroception to signal, "I'm not a predator and you are not under attack."
Yeah. And you pair those physical markers with psychological safety, which comes through reflective functioning.
Reflective functioning, what's that?
That's the capacity to accurately mirror and understand your partner's internal state without judging it or trying to fix it immediately. It's saying, I see that you're feeling overwhelmed right now, and just letting that be true.
Oh, I see.
When the body sees physical safety and the mind feels psychologically mirrored, the drawbridge can slowly lower.
Which brings us to the core realization for anyone listening to this. You don't have to choose a side in this debate.
No, you don't.
You don't have to decide definitively if your shutdown is purely a psychological defense protecting your fragile ego or purely a biological reflex protecting your organism.
To heal, you must speak to both.
Exactly. You honor the body's primal need for physical safety, and you honor the mind's profound need for unconditional relational acceptance.
And this raises the question of what this entire dynamic represents. Like, we aren't just talking about why someone gets quiet during a disagreement. We are talking about the universal human search for belonging and the terrifying risk it requires.
It is about the profound vulnerability of allowing ourselves to be truly seen by another human being without the fear of losing ourselves or being destroyed in the process. We are suspended in this delicate, sometimes agonizing balance.
Yeah.
We are caught between the profound, hardwired biological imperative to survive at all costs and the equally profound, beautiful human imperative to connect and be loved.
And neither lens is a diagnosis of brokenness. The mind building a fortress, the body pulling the emergency brake, these are not flaws.
No.
They are brilliant, desperate acts of deep self-preservation.
But there is a provocative, almost haunting reality to consider here. If your deepest biological survival mechanism and your deepest human need for connection can be fundamentally at war with each other, it means true intimacy isn't just psychologically brave.
Yeah.
It is biologically unnatural until safety is established. You are asking your body to override millions of years of evolutionary defense just to hold someone's hand. If this conversation felt true for you, both sides of it, you're always welcome here. You can subscribe to Leone Patterns and keep sitting with us.
Let's just slow down and look at what we've covered today.
Yeah, so on one hand, We have the mind building this relational fortress to protect its inner world, and on the other, the body pulling a biological emergency brake to survive overwhelm.
And neither is a flaw. Both are just profound acts of self-preservation.
It really is something. Like, you think about the poignant beauty of the human mind. Even in our most isolated, shut down, schizoid moments, we aren't empty. We are secretly longing for an object. We're taking our fragile capacity to love and hiding it away in the deepest vault of the castle just to make sure it survives the winter.
And on the other hand, you have the breathtaking resilience of the human body. The exact same nervous system that learns to freeze, collapse, and go numb to protect us from the unbearable, well, that same system can, with time, physical safety, and patience, learn to thaw. It can learn to put down its shields and embrace connection.
Same pace, same questions. See you then.